the Thing with host Judy Sleed. Guest Paul Brennan, Regional Director of the Hamptons. Underwritten by Windmill Village and Burns Inn.
Love me in London. Come to the Plays the Thing, and today I have a good friend, Paul Brenner, is my Brennan. It's not Brenner. Brenner.
That's correct. With an N.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Judy.
After knowing you for so many years, I still make a mistake with the end of your name.
Many people do.
And we really shouldn't do that because your family has been here for quite a long time.
Yeah, well, my mother's side, actually the last name is Sayre, and they were one of the original founders of Southampton in 1640. So I go back that far, well, my lineage does, and the Brennan side came out from Brooklyn in 1910. Oh. So they farmed on the flatlands in Brooklyn, and when the subway came out, they sold the farm and moved out here. And I went to Bridgehampton, which is where I'm from.
Yes, I met one of your uncles who said he used to be one of the original farmers, or yeah, a farmer, right?
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up on a farm. Ocean Road was where the farm was, and we still have a piece of property there, but they used to farm about 300 acres of potatoes, and that's what I grew up on.
That's quite a history. You are a real native of the Hamptons.
Yeah, I have still have the dirt under my nails.
Well, you actually born here also.
Yes.
And you went to school here?
I went to Bridgehampton until 9th grade, and then 10th grade I started at Mercy. Went to Mercy High.
With the Mercy?
Mercy High School over in Riverhead.
Over where?
Riverhead.
River? Well, you didn't mention too far.
No, not too far.
I was thinking maybe you're going to say, oh yes, I went to the University of Texas or Los Angeles. No.
No, I like the Northeast. That's especially Long Island.
And how did you become what you're doing now from picking potatoes?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. In my youth, I was a fairly good basketball player, and I went to college on a scholarship. And when I finished college, I had an opportunity to play professionally over in Australia for a couple of years.
Australia?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't mention that you left the Hamptons.
No, it's so many years ago. It's sort of a dim memory these days. But anyway, I played over there for a couple of years, and I realized at the time, you know, I had to either make a decision to stay in Australia and continue with basketball or come back to the States. And I came back for love, and I, of course, didn't know what to do. So a good friend of mine who actually had sold my father's farm, or part of my father's farm, when I was about 13, was a guy named Alan Schneider. So I wrote to Alan when I was in Australia, and I said, Alan, what do you suggest I do if I come back? And he said, come to work for me. So that's how it started, way back in 1978.
Wow, 78, so you really didn't know anything about it.
Well, you know, still at that time it was quite a rural and agrarian society out here. And I did know about some real estate, obviously from the agricultural side. But it was interesting, I didn't know, when I started working in real estate, I didn't know the names of the roads. I knew how to get from point A to point B by whose farm it was. If you're going down to the Nayland farm, or if you're going over to Barshevsky's or wherever, I knew how to get there, but I didn't know the names of the roads, so I had to learn them when I started out.
So you started at the very bottom, and in the 70s it was still rural area here?
It just had started. The development had just started. My uncle had sold 60 acres down at the end of Ocean Road with the beach banks for $3,000 an acre.
Oh gosh.
So that's, I remember, and there was a guy named Sacker who started the subdivision, so all of those houses down there were just coming online, and lots were just being developed at that juncture.
Mm-hmm. So now you are the regional director of the Hamptons.
Yeah, for Prudential Douglas Elliman, right.
So what does that mean?
Well, I oversee 9 offices that Prudential has out here. Prior to Prudential, I had, working with Alan, then I went on to my own firm, which I had for about 8 years.
I think that's when I met you.
Yeah, which I sold to Sotheby's, and then I stayed there for 2 years, and then started with Dottie Herman 9 years ago, building a region for Prudential, Douglas Elliman.
So you are directing these real estate offices.
So they say. Depends on the day.
You don't actually sell houses anymore.
No, I still have a number of clients that I've worked with over the years that still come to me and give me referrals, and I sell an occasional house. I sold probably the largest sale in Bridgehampton last year for $31 million.
What would that be?
It was a house on Sag Pond on about 4 acres that a gentleman bought.
Sometimes when I look at these buildings, I can't believe how big they are. What do people do with all those rooms?
That's still, that started back in the early 90s when houses seemed to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't know when it's going to stop, but it is kind of an enigma to try to reason why people have to have such big houses.
They're trying to outdo each other, I think.
Well, I guess. But the interesting thing is that in Sagaponack we have the largest house in America.
In America?
Yeah.
Was it ever written up?
Sure. It's been in the news for many, many times.
How come I didn't read it? You mean out here locally, or it's been written up elsewhere?
Elsewhere. Oh, it's been all over the newspapers. And
you were the one who sold it?
No, I didn't sell that. It was bought by a man. It was an interesting story, actually. It was 65 acres on the ocean that a gentleman named Ira Rennert bought.
Oh, I did read about it.
And he put up, he used the interesting thing was everybody was so concerned about subdividing property. He actually took a 65-acre lot and used it as a single building lot. So that's how he was able to get such a large house on it.
And tell me, does he live there?
Yeah, I've had some sightings. I don't know him personally. I have done some work for him through some consulting work, but he comes out.
He comes out. Can you imagine how many people clean his house?
That I have no clue.
He probably has an army of helpers.
But as you know, Sagaponack was named the most expensive zip code in America as well.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, apparently.
The most expensive zip code and the biggest house in America.
Exactly.
Well,
and when I was growing up, Sagaponack, if people could pronounce it, you know, it was just a sleepy little hamlet that, you know, you had to go through from Bridgehampton to get to East Hampton.
Sagaponack. Somehow I think of Sagaponack as going south instead of going east from Bridgehampton.
Well, it runs from Sag Pond, the middle of Sag Pond, east to Town Line Road. Mm-hmm. And then some north of the highway also.
North also?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I know very little about Sagaponack.
Well, it's also become an incorporated village now.
It did.
Yep. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And so you were talking about you were in Australia.
Right.
Australia, that's a different continent. That's where the kangaroos live.
Well, interesting enough, Australia is it's a fascinating country. I haven't been back in a while, although some friends have come here to visit me. but most of the people live in a few cities, and it's the size of the United States, with a population of, I guess, maybe 20 million now, and but they live in, 4 or 5 major cities, which are all on the coast.
Mm-hmm. And I remember you mentioned that you came back for love. Love of what or whom?
Oh, there was a girlfriend in college that I left. I left behind when I went to Australia. So. And
she waited for you.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, that's what I came back for.
That's what you. So, are you sorry or are you happy? Do you think you made the right choice?
Well, it's interesting. I've always loved Bridgehampton, Sagaponack. Sagaponack's where I live now, but I've always loved the area. I've always loved the ocean, and it was a good move for me. Alan Schneider was right when he told me to come back, because I knew that I didn't want to farm. I didn't want to follow.
You didn't want to follow
in my father's footsteps. But obviously, at the time when I was started in real estate, there weren't that many men in real estate. There was all basically a housewife industry, second job.
Really?
Yeah.
I never see all the things you're telling me.
Yeah, so it's evolved over the years, and I've done fairly well. I've put 2 kids through school and college, and.
What are your kids?
Yeah, yeah. They're mine. All mine. They're now 24 and 21.
My goodness, are they as good looking as you are?
My son, yeah, they're both good looking.
Yeah, they tall as you?
My son is actually 6'7", so he's 5
What
inches
about
taller.
you? How tall are you?
6'2".
That's all you. You're a very handsome fella.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And the other son?
A girl.
Well, you have a girl and a boy.
Yeah, she's the eldest. She works for CBS News in Philadelphia.
Manhattan?
Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
Followed in her mother's footsteps. So.
Her mother, your ex-wife?
Ex-wife, yeah.
Works for CBS also?
She was with NBC for 17 years.
Really? My son is with NBC, doing different things, of course.
Yeah.
And being that your son is so tall, is he a basketball player?
Yeah, he's out at the University of Utah, so
and
he'll be
he
playing
likes that? He's going to have
Well, he just started. He just started this year. He transferred and went out there. He's going to summer school, and he'll be there. He's going to try out for the team, so we'll see how it goes. But he can play.
So what else did you do besides basketball playing and real estate? Is there anything else
That's it.
that
Pretty
you
much
did?
real estate. Pretty much real estate has been my stock and trade ever since I came back. And what I learned over the years is that real estate is really a full-time job. It's pretty much all-consuming, and I enjoy it very much. I mean, it has evolved over the years, and it has become a much more high-pressured job than it was when I started out. And
well, obviously you put a lot of time into it, because you said all-consuming. If you want to do a good job, you are doing a good job.
Well, it's like anything else. If you want to be successful at it, you have to put the time in.
Right.
So
do you have any hobbies?
Not at this time. I walk the beach in the morning pretty much, and I lift weights a couple times a week, and I used to play tennis quite a bit, but that's waned off over the past couple of years.
Do you ever dance?
Dance?
I think you would be a very striking dancer.
I've often thought of doing ballroom dancing. That's sort of a fantasy of mine, if you will.
I'm so happy you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So do you fantasize yourself swirling on the dance floor with Ginger Rogers?
Yeah,
yes?
I don't know about Ginger, but
well.
I can think of a few others.
Really? Okay, I'm so glad that you have these. We all have fantasies that we would like to do something, but very few of us pursue it or really try to do it.
Well, mine has been primarily since I've started working is to really make sure my kids are settled and get a good start in life. It was when I was growing up, you know, agriculture was on the decline, so you saw. I could think about when I was growing up. I could, off the top of my head, one day I just wrote down the number of farm families that used to make their livelihoods farming, and I counted about 90. That's just out of my tiny brain, and I think there are about 5 left now.
Oh, 5.
So, yeah.
In other words, still people are farming here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's some viable farms, Sagaponic.
Well, you have to have it. I mean, we need all the things that grow, so we could. So if they not do it here in the Hamptons, then they do it elsewhere.
Well, there is. That brings it to another point. There is nowhere else to do it other than the Hamptons. You know, there's only 30 miles left, and then you're in the ocean. So one of my, if you want to talk about fantasies, and it's not,
yes,
which I've made into a reality as best I could, is preservation of the character of the area. I've worked extremely hard. I helped get the Community Preservation Fund, the 2% transfer tax in place about 10 years ago, and I'm on the board of the Nature Conservancy. So it's a paradox in a sense. You know, I sell real estate. I've made my living from real estate, but I also feel that it's important to keep the character of the area, and else why come out here? So that's been an important part of my life also. Is that.
Well, that's really good that you're doing something good. Not many people are motivated to do something to preserve this earth.
Yeah, well, it's not only the earth, but the character of the area. I think
well, that's part of the earth.
Yeah, exactly. We have, you know, the soil out here is very, very rich. It's Bridgehampton loam is one of the richest soils in the world, and
you keep saying the world.
Yeah, the world. And it's unfortunate that so much of that soil has been lost to development.
So this comes as a conflict with what you're doing.
Yeah, at times, but there is a balance.
There is a balance. That's good. So, do you have any people that you would like to talk about that you had dealt with that was sort of funny or interesting, memorable? You dealt with a lot of people in your
Well, it's a little.
field.
I mean, it's a little. I don't like to mention too many high-profile clients.
Well, don't leave out the names. Just
Yeah.
you could tell the story. I'm sure you have some funny ones.
I don't know how funny they are.
Nah,
They weren't funny at the time. I don't have any. You know, I don't have any really anecdotal. I mean, I've been involved in some very, very high-profile major sales out here. Probably the most interesting sale to me that has changed the temper of the area has been the Atlantic Golf Course in Bridgehampton, the property that I sold at that time. During the late 80s, early 90s, when all that was taking place, north of the highway was no man's land. Nobody would go north of the highway. They all wanted to be south of the highway, close to the ocean. Mm-hmm. And then when I sold the property and the Atlantic Golf Course was developed, all of a sudden that raised the profile of north of the highway, and it became okay to live there.
God, that's funny.
Yeah, so it's interesting how people from year to year or generation to generation find that what was not such a great place to live a few years back becomes a good place to live. Very similar to the city in the sense of, you know, you all used to be the Upper East Side, And now all of a sudden downtown becomes very popular. So that phenomena, dynamic also happens out here.
And when you, like brokers, they usually sell the houses, so it probably takes a very long time to sell a house.
It all depends. Some take, the other day, what fresh comes to mind, there were 23 acres that I had, that this, an old French family owned that still lived in France. And I had tried to sell it for many, many years, get them to sell it for many, many years, because I had a lot of buyers for it. And finally the matriarch died about 2 months ago. And the gentleman called me who was handling the estate, and we came to terms on what it was worth, and we put it on the market and sold it in 2 days. It was in contract in 2 days. So those atypical sales can happen, and then there are sales that can take years.
Well, actually, I was thinking like on a house, somebody's looking for a house, so you have to like list it, and you have to show it to this person and that person, and you have to negotiate, and this, in that sort of
yeah,
fashion.
and again, generally speaking, that there is no real time limit. If there was, I mean, to actually, once you buy a house, it takes probably 45 to 60 days to close on it, to go through the title and the surveys and the inspections and all of the paperwork, mortgages, etc. So it takes about 45 days. But I mean, I still have people that I've had for 20 years that haven't bought houses, that I still show houses to once in a while. So
they're looking for 20 years, and
20
they can't
years,
find anything they like.
Yes, they've kicked many a tire, I'll tell you.
The last time I saw you, we were at a play called South Pacific.
Yes.
So what was your function there?
Well, our firm likes to be involved in the community. I think it's really important that Prudential Douglas Elliman keeps its name in front of the public and also does some beneficial work on behalf of the community. And there was a woman in our East Hampton office, secretary actually, an AA, who had been involved with the Springs Community Theater and produced it. And she ran out of money. So she came to me and said, could you spring for X dollars to pay the band? So we all got behind it. We paid the money, and then many of our people who were involved in the East Hampton office helped out to put the production on and carry it off. And I have, you know, I'm normally speaking, I'm not a fan of going to community plays, but I have to say this one was a pretty good one. I enjoyed it very much.
Oh,
Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I got there also because two of the players, Josh Gladstone, who's the director of, executive director of the theater in Guildhall, John Drew Theater, he recommended that these two people contact me, and they were on my show, the two lead players.
Yeah, good.
And then I got to talk to them, and it just so happens when you talk to people, you find that they know this, that, and the other one. And the man, his name was Rozzy, and I said, oh, I know a Rozzy. As it turned out, they are brothers. So it was a very interesting...
Of the Sag Harbor Rozzies?
Excuse me?
Of the Sag Harbor Rozzies?
Yes, you know them?
Sure, that's a...
See,
the families
we
of
know
Rozzy
one
families.
another, so I became very friendly. And right now, the lady who has, what's her name? She's one of the producers, and she has my play that I've written. She said she will definitely have a reading with her company.
Oh, good.
Which I'm very excited about.
I think it's important. I mean, it's to support people who, you know, real estate is very similar. You know, you support your brokers who stay involved with the company and put effort forth, and that should be acknowledged. And
So how about, would you ever consider getting up on the stage?
Oh God, That's another fantasy. But yeah, I actually have thought about that because I enjoy it so much. I often wonder whether I could pull it off or not.
Well, you have the presence of an actor.
Oh, thank you.
And so maybe you could be in one of my productions.
Okay. When do we start?
Well, you have to ask Jane. Her name is Jane.
Jane.
You have to ask her when she's going to start doing the show, and you could. Well, actually, the first time it's not going to be a full production, just a reading. Mm-hmm. Do you also sing?
Badly, but I do sing.
Yeah. Well, maybe it would be lovely if you could be on the one of the casts in the reading.
And that, you know, with the play South Pacific, I think that was the most definitive feature for me, were the voices. Those
beautiful
some of those voices were very, very good. I was very surprised.
Yes, it was. So I don't even, we covered just about everything we talked about, so many things.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate very much you having me on here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been thinking about you a lot, and I'm so glad I ran into you. Well, actually, I ran into you in another place after South Pacific. And then I asked you to come. I know you for such a long time, but I know very little about you. I always said, oh, that's such a good-looking guy. And now I want to thank the whole crew and all my underwriters. And don't forget to tune in on my plays, The Thing. I don't know what channels are where, but it's running elsewhere besides out here. And I'm going to say bye, everybody.
Goodbye, thank you.
Bye, till next time. And I'm going to have a lot more interesting guests signed up. And just keep tuning in. So, I think
Love me in Paris. Love me in London. Love me around the world. Love me.
it was good.
What channel is it?